Would be a good idea. Okay, and share. All right, so we're recording, and I'm just doing a quick overview of what we talked about yesterday. So yesterday we looked at preparation. Preparation is key for everything when you're speaking. Takes away a lot of the stress. So we did our preparation yesterday, and I showed you my, I just need to find it. I showed you my my preparation. This was the one I played around with yesterday. And I didn't do a lot more to it apart from the episodes thing. I actually went and did a bit of a research and a bit of a AI, chat GP thingy, and came up with my 20, I came up with 20 various sort of episodes that would go with the topics. Now, the topic is still within those topics, but the titles are probably going to be slightly different. So that's what we started with. And today what we're going to be doing is putting that all into what I call the episode planner. Okay, so today we're looking at taking all that stuff we sort of threw onto a piece of paper, and we're going to start looking at exactly what it is that we're going to do. So first of all, this will be available to anyone. This is my basic podcast plan. What I tend to do is I end up with a very small folder, and I have the main podcast plan at the beginning. There we go. Hello. I'm already screen sharing, so we've literally just started. I'm one of those awful people. I remember the days when you had a meeting live and you'd turn up on time, and Zoom seems to have turned us all into these, and I do it myself all the time, sort of drifting in, but I find myself starting dead on time because as a speaker, we are almost conditioned to begin at a certain time and end at a certain time, and that's the amount of time you've got. And certainly doing competition, if you go outside of that time, you're immediately disqualified. So yeah, I can be a bit pernickety about starting on time. Anyway, we're going from yesterday when we did the preparation. We did a big brainstorm, and I'm going to just show this here. Let me just make sure I've got everybody on here. So this was my preparation. The marketing objectives are really, really important. You must know the why you're doing what you're doing. With anything, you have to know the why, because then you know who you're targeting towards, you know how to structure your topics, things like that. Okay. And yesterday I was struggling with this, the episodes, because you have to have at least 10 episodes that you can create to reach a topic, at least 10. If you can't get to 10, the topic may be the wrong topic. So I played around with these titles around overcoming adversity, women, and all of that. And I've actually come up with 20 now, and I'll show you in a minute what they look like. But today I'm taking everything that was on the brainstorming thing, and I am moving this over to my main podcast plan. This is going to be how my podcast is going to run. So you will need to sort of think about this. It is about taking all that stuff in your head and then focusing it down. So my topic, and yesterday I talked about women, overcoming adversity, women generally doing good, all of that sort of thing. So my topic still is about women in business, and I'm going to keep it that loose at the moment, because I'm still trying to create. I've got a name for the podcast, and I'll get to you in a minute, and it sort of fits the topic, but it still needs a little bit of work. So we know my audience is going to be women entrepreneurs, if I could even spell it. So we got that from yesterday. That's who my audience is. It's the audience I work with. And I'm going to stick with that audience at the moment. So my show format, so I've got to think about this, okay? My format, it can be a bit mixed. I've done formats where it's just been me. I've done formats where it's been me and a guest. I quite like the idea of a panel, a regular panel, so the sessions. And if I take you back over here where I've been playing around with my planner, these are my 20 sort of topic ideas, and it's all about women entrepreneurs. It's about strategy. It's overcoming bias. I've got these 20 titles for episodes. So I'm thinking I wouldn't want to do that on my own, because that's not going to have enough it's not going to have enough diversity in it. It's not going to have enough sort of real questions and inspiration in it. So I'm thinking my show format, if I can pull this off, is to have a panel of women in business. And I'm thinking no more than 4. But having about 4 allows me then to think, well, if someone can't make it one week, that's fine. There'll only be 3 of us, or maybe there'll only be 2 of us. But it's a nice general number, nice 4. Okay. So that's in my head. I can see this now, this lovely sort of panel of women who are in business, talking through those various titles I've got, and then inviting, so plus an expert guest, which I think would make for great discussion. And I like that idea because it's a little bit different from some of the stuff I've listened to, and it gives it a bit more flavor. But back to making the cake. So now, record or live. This one, people, if you're nervous about live interviewing, and a lot of people are, trust me, it takes a long time to get really, really comfortable doing that, then pre-record. There is nothing wrong with pre-recording episodes. And in some ways, it's easier because you can pre-record them all and then load them up to go out live at the various dates you're going to have them go out. It also helps with your planning, and it lowers the stress that something's going to go wrong on the day. So pre-recording is not a bad idea. Live has a little bit more energy to it. It has a little bit more pizzazz to it, if you like. For me, I'm going to pre-record because I like to do live webinars once or twice a year, sort of big events, bigger online events. So I don't want them to get mixed up with the podcast stuff. So I'm going to pre-record. And it means by pre-recording, I can take snippets out and use it for promotional purposes. So I'm going to pre-record. And the other thing it helps do is equally, if you've got guests and you're going to do it live, you've got set dates and times. And that could be really stressful because things happen, or your guests can't turn up, or they can't fit that, So I'm very much a pre-record fan for podcasting. I just think it makes your life a lot easier. If you love doing it live, go for it. But really think about whether you've got the capacity to do that. And of course, that will depend on how often you're going to do it. I'm going to put that on my list. How often? Probably not. That needs to go in there. So I'm going to pop that in there, pre-record. And I do series. I don't have a weekly format or a monthly format. I pre-record, say, 12 sessions, and I load them up as a series, and then I'll start on the next series, pre-record, and then I will upload them. So that's my stress leveler, if you like. So for me, it will be pre-record, and I will do 12 episodes per series. The only thing I now have to work out is from that list of names I've got for each episode, whether each series is a particular topic, if that makes sense. So let me go back here. I'm backwards and forwards, so I'm sorry. So when I go through my list here of these titles, and I'm thinking, okay, inspiring stories could be a series on its own. I could find 12 great female entrepreneurs and do that as series 1. Strategies for building resilience and bouncing back, that could be a series on its own. So I could break down each one of these titles into a series, and then some of these may be part of that. So I wouldn't necessarily use all of these titles. So part of my planning is now going in and going, okay, I need to find 12 successful women entrepreneurs and interview them and pre-record them and put them in the bank, so to speak. I then need to pre-record with the panel strategies for building resilience. Now, here's the thing. If you haven't planned this, you may miss out on the next thing I'm thinking, because part of the interviewing of those successful women entrepreneurs could be, one of the questions could be, what strategies did they use for building resilience and bouncing back? And so I could use these stories to help me build content for the next series. And that's what I mean when I say, if you don't plan, you miss out things, because it's only by looking at it and thinking about it that I think, you know what, that would be great. This overcoming gender bias, again, some of that may come out of these, but that may be part of the strategies for building resilience. So now I'm taking all these sort of titles and deciding which series they belong in. So I could end up with 3 or 4 series, 4 series through a year, just about, or 3. And I now have ideas for every series, and I then can go back and plan out. So let's say that's series 1. So I'm going to put series 2 in there. Now that could be part of series 2. That could be part of series 2. The navigating male-dominated industries. I actually think that is a series on its own, because I do work with a lot of women in tech or in male-dominated areas. And so this whole navigating, for now, I'm going to put it as a series 3, and breaking the glass ceiling is series 3. See what I mean? So now this plan is beginning to flesh out a bit, and suddenly I'm going, actually, I can find enough to do 3 or 4 series. So back to the plan, people. So I'm going to pre-record 12 episodes per series, and I'm going to do both. And I'll tell you why I'm going to do both. Content, simple as that. If you do both, so you do it by video, you can do it on Zoom just as easily, and then when you download, you'll have an audio file and a video file. Okay, so your audio file is great. You can upload that when you're ready up to your podcasting platform. Job done. Perfect. If you've got the video as well, you can use the video for promotional purposes. You can break it down. You can transcribe it. I'm not going to go into too much detail, because we do look at this whole content creation stuff and reusing content quite a bit as we go on through this week. So I always do both. Now, this is totally up to you whether you want to do both or not. And it may well depend on the guest that you've got and how easy they find all of this. So you have to consider what you have the capacity for. I'm quite happy doing both. It helps that I know I don't have to do a lot of editing because I'm quite good at keeping the flow going, and I know how to interview and I know how to get the answers I want at questions. So for me, it will be both. For you, think about how you're going to edit it. Now, some people want it perfect. They want all the ums and ahs taken out. They want all the gaps taken out. They want, personally, keep it as real as possible. You are going to make mistakes. I make mistakes. I choke on words sometimes. I suddenly go, oh, I forgot what I'm talking about. It makes you human. It adds to the flavor of your podcast. It's part of your personality. So don't worry, that you think you've got to edit it to its finest degree, because those of you that want perfection will never get there, because we all know there's no such thing as real perfection for perfectionists. So I tend to keep it all in. And if there's a really, really funny bit in there where something's gone completely doolally, I will pull that out of the editing and use that for promotional purposes and things like that, or as part of the education of see things go wrong, even for the best of us. So I do both, because then what I've got is I've got an audio version, I've got a video version. I can cut down my video versions into short story reels, and I can then transcribe them, and I've got blogs, got posts for social media, and that all goes towards the marketing of the whole thing. So you are creating your content for promotional while you're actually recording your podcast. How long are my episodes going to be for? Me, 30 minutes tops. One, because I like to get the best nuggets I can into that 30 minutes. And I know that my topics are those that are relatively general, and my audience are very, very, very busy people. So half an hour is fine. And that will include my intro and my outro, which I'll come to when we talk about actually delivering, using the platforms and things like that. So for me, half an hour is enough. You may decide that you want to do it shorter, and that doesn't matter. You could do 15-minute podcasts if you want. Or you may decide that the subjects you have are so engaging that you're going to do it for longer. I wouldn't go over an hour. We humans don't have the mental capacity anymore. And if you've got great podcasts that are up to an hour long, you might want to think about breaking them in two. So you've got a part one and a part two, because actually half an hour is the optimal time for people to listen. It's the world we live in. Everything's so busy and so fast, and half an hour, it's usually about half an hour. Then they're in the car traveling wherever. If they're on a train, it's slightly different, but half an hour tends to be the preferred length. So think about that. And if you've got a lot of material in one podcast and it maybe goes on for an hour, don't worry about it. Just break it down into part one and part two. And then you've also got, if you can leave it on a cliffhanger, people are going to listen to part two. Cliffhangers are great things. So think about that. But for me, my length of episode is going to be 30 minutes. That's what I'm going to do. So the release schedule. Now, I'm not going to fill that in at the moment because I don't know when at this stage of the game I'm going to launch the first one. In my head, I'm thinking I could do this in the next couple of weeks because I've got an idea in my head of who I want to record. And if you know in your plan, you've got, so for me, I've got this back to here. I've got all these guests, the series. I know who the guest is going to be, and I've already got a recording date. I can be publishing, even though I've only maybe got half the series pre-recorded, because I've got the other things. I know that they're going to be recorded and all up for published date. So for series one, for instance, I may decide I'm going to record next week and I'm going to publish the week after. So I go through all my series ones, check out, what dates people have got. So if I know I can fit that all in, so the published date is one after the other, and I'll have them all pre-recorded, I'll do it that way. Again, this comes down to how comfortable you are. So my release schedule is going to be one a week because I'm pre-recording. So I'm going to pre-record and I'm going to put out one a week. So that will be a 12-week series. Okay, one a week. Perfect. Now, by doing that, I'm not setting myself up for failure. When I first started doing that, I thought, oh, I could do a podcast every week. I could do. Honestly, by the time I got to about the 8th or 9th, I was pulling my hair out trying to find guests. We don't want to be doing that. So I now work in series, 12-week series. It means that my panel of experts could maybe be different in the next series. They don't always have to be the same people. My expert guests, we've got them nicely into that 12-week series, and up it goes. And people have access to it then all the time. And then I would start on series 2. I never start on series 2 till I've got all of series 1 pre-recorded. And I know that the automation's working, I know the schedule's working, and I know they're going up, and I can measure and I can see what's going on. Then I begin series 2. Don't make the mistake of going, oh, I've got all that set. So, I've pre-recorded a couple. I'll start on series 2 now. Unless you're really, really expert at podcasting or scheduling or any of that stuff, don't give yourself extra stress. Don't give yourself an extra headache. All right. So we come to the name of the podcast. Now, in the workbook that you're able to download from the Spaces page on the network, there's a lot of information. In fact, let me see if I can. No, it's not that one. Let's see if I can find it for you. No, I can't. So never mind. But in the book, all the beginning of it explains to you about names of podcasts. There's information around don't put your own name in it unless you're really famous. There's advice around, what that name needs to do. It sort of really needs to say on the tin what's inside, all of that sort of stuff. And so when you're thinking about that name of the podcast, don't make it too long, don't make it overcomplicated, don't try to be too clever, keep it simple. Now, I have had this idea in my head for a long time for a name, and I'm still umming and ahhing whether I can get away with it, called When Your Tits Get in the Way. Because there's this whole thing about women, we can sometimes be our own worst enemy. And I love the idea of having a podcast called When Your Tits Get in the Way. And I'm going to commit it to paper. Or it may be something around boobs. But I want the title to say to people, women, we can do this. Women, out there across the globe, we can, do whatever we want to do. And we need to stop thinking about how we were brought up and various things around not shouting and not boasting and not doing this and not doing that. And, all sorts of stuff, the gender bias stuff, all sorts of stuff going, especially in today's woke world. So actually, When Your Tits Get in the Way may not be the best title. Thinking about it, I think I would probably be cancelled by some people. But maybe something around, don't be a boob. I don't know. I'm still playing with that, which is why I'm going to put lots of question marks there. And I'm still playing with names. Unfortunately, I can't do artwork till I've got the name right. Can't do music till I've got the name right. So those 3, the name, the podcast artwork, and the podcast music, are 3 that sort of tend to go together because you want it all to be really, well, I want it to really reflect me. I want it to reflect the podcast. I want it to reflect the women in a respectful way. And I know using that title, When Your Tits Get in the Way, will upset some people. So I'm still mulling that over in my head around whether I'm going to use that title or not. What else did I write down here? Being a woman in a woke world. Maybe that's the title I should use. And actually, the more I think about it, let me just pop that in there as my Actually, now thinking about it, yeah, I like that one actually. I like that because, again, I don't want it to be something that I don't want to get caught up in that biology argument, you know. And this is about women, whatever we identify as, but being in a woke world and all those things that come with it. So actually, I like being a woman in a woke world as a working title. I do actually. I think I like that. So that one's on 75% going to keep it. So my artwork then would need to be a woman, a world, something else. The music would need to reflect internationally. So, and in the booklet, it tells you places where you can download free music. So don't go and jump on, some lovely in the charts or famous piece of music that you can just use it. You can't. So when it comes to the music, there's all sorts of things we have to think about, and the artwork and one thing and another. There's a whole putting that together, because it's the first thing people are going to see, the title and the artwork, and the first thing they're going to hear is the music. So really take some time thinking about that. And if you're not a designer, use Canva. Oh, God bless Canva. So my podcast structure is going to be an opening, and that'll be a quick statement from me about the podcast. And that's generally. So I will probably record something like, welcome to the Being in a Woman in a Woke World podcast. Today, now, I've got to think about this now, because I don't want to keep changing the intro and the outro. So if I do today's episode is about, I'm going to have to record that for every session. Is that an onerous task? Not really. But it does mean when I'm putting it together, the editing, it's got different audio in it. Do you know what? No, I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce each episode. Have a think about that one. If your topics are pretty much the same, maybe the one where I'm doing storytelling, for instance, the stories, inspirational stories, I may just have my opening as a welcome to the Being a Woman in a Woke World. I'm glad you're here to hear another inspiring story from a great guest, and let's get started. And then my first question will be introduce yourself and tell us what you do type thing. So think about how you're going to introduce it, and you need to introduce it. You can't go in cold. People need to be warmed into it. And that opening has to be quite exciting. It has to be uplifting. It has to be. And if you struggle with that, just go on Fiverr.com and get someone to do it for you. It's an announcement. It's a here we are, and are you ready to listen to? So that's how I'm going to do it. I'm probably going to record each one before I actually do the interview. So this is another great tip you can do. So when I've set up my interview for pre-recording, I can record the opening of that episode, go into the interview, record the end bit of thank you all for joining us. Don't forget, next week we'll be talking to or talking about, or whatever it may be. And then you can edit those two bits or leave them where they are. Totally up to you. So I'm going to make my statement about the podcast as part of my recording. And another reason why these planning sessions work for you, because you're able to think your way through it. So I've sat there and thought, how am I going to do that? Do I want to record everything separately? Oh, hang on a minute. I could do it as part of the recording and then just take, and actually I wouldn't even to take those bits. I can then put the music underneath that will fade out as we're going into the actual interview and then fade back up again when I do the outro. So actually, by thinking that through, I've found an answer to my capacity to do something, and I love to do things as easy as humanly possible. So this is an easy way to do it. So that's what I'm going to do. Statement from me about when I'm recording, do the interview or panel discussion, and then outro. That's my podcast structure. Simple as that. Okay. Beginning, middle, and end. And on each end, my artwork will go. And the artwork will never change. People will recognize that artwork. You can have different, depending on which platform you're using, you can have a different image for each episode, but your overall artwork will be for your podcast. Equipment. Now I put that in here for any of you that are starting fresh and are not sure what equipment to get. I've got all the equipment. I've done it before, so I don't need to worry. But basically what you need is a mic and a computer. Simple as that. In the workbook, when it goes on to think about equipment, it'll explain the difference between the mics and what you want to buy and what you want to use. Don't think you have to spend a fortune on mics. People will pay hundreds and hundreds for a mic. You don't have to. I have a beautiful microphone. I've got two or three, but I have a beautiful microphone I use. It has a great quality to it, a great tone to it, and it didn't cost me more than 40 quid. And even then I thought, well, that's a lot of money when I first started. But the quality of your recording, especially on audio, just the podcast, has to be clear and it has to be crisp. So invest what you can in a decent mic. Okay, ask around, ask people what they use, but there is some stuff in the workbook around microphones. Also headphones. I have my own office. It's very quiet. It's at home. There's nobody else around. So I don't use headphones when I'm doing recording for all sorts of reasons, but I don't use one. You may want to use one. If you're in a shared office or you've got outside noise or whatever it may be, invest in a good pair of earphones, a really good pair. Not the buds, just the buds, because they aren't always as good at cancelling out outside noise. But again, there's a piece in the workbook around headphones. And actually for a podcast, that's all you need. If you're doing video as well, like I am, I'm doing both. I'm using Zoom and I'm using a camera I bought. You could just easily use your phone. In fact, phones today are so sophisticated, you could do the whole thing on your phone and not have to worry about all the other equipment. Again, you need to figure out what works for you, what works best for you. If you're in a room that's very echoey, then you'll need to get like a big foamy thing to over the mic. See, I don't know the technical terms for it, but it compacts down, that's the word I'm looking for, but it stops all that echoing going on. Or chuck a load of cushions and lots of curtains up in your office, because sound then gets absorbed into soft furnishings and things, so you'll lose some of that echoing. But you're going to have to play around with that, to be fair, and you might decide, if it's your very first podcast, that you'll get the very basic equipment, see how you go. And depending on whether you're enjoying it or not, or it's working for you in your business or not, you might want to upgrade your equipment as you go along. All right. So mic and a computer really is all you need, or your phone. It really is. It's, you don't have to have all the expensive stuff, because it's the content that matters and the way you deliver it. Okay. So as long as people can hear you really clearly and see you, if it's on video as well, then that's all you need. And then we come to the podcast platform. Now, I have used, I have what I really love using called Spreaker. And the reason I like using Spreaker is because if you upgrade, you can actually record directly to Spreaker. and you can pull in your intros and outros and add everything on, and it sort of almost edits as it goes along. And I like that because I'm lazy. They do have a free version, and they upgrade to everything else. There are some new platforms around, so I'm going to go and have a look at those and do some trial runs on some of their platforms to see if they're better than Spreaker. Spreaker shares to Apple Tunes, it goes to iTunes, Google Podcasts, and others. It also shares it automatically to all my social media and things like that. So I like Spreaker. I really do. So I'm probably going to stick with them, but I will have a look around. It's again, it depends how much you want to spend, how much do you want to invest, and how big a part of your marketing or branding or PR is your podcast. We go back to those marketing objectives. Yeah, this is when it comes in. How big a part is podcasting in that? Or is it videos that are more important? If you don't have a speaking strategy, if you don't have a strategy for how you're going to speak about your business, are you going to use podcasting? Are you going to use live streaming? Are you going to use video? Are you going to do it all? Are you going to try and just throw paint at the wall and hope some sticks? It needs to be strategized in exactly the same way that when you decide you're going to do something like a podcast, you start with your prep and then you plan and you have an outline and you have something to follow that helps create consistency. It helps you measure. It helps you do all those things that you want to do. Okay. Now, one of the other things is how I'm going to measure. So let me take you back over here a minute. So in here, I've got, take no notice of these modified lastings. That's to do with, because I use Trello a lot, and it's how I'm getting my Google Sheet to link with Trello. But basically, on each, because this will change now, depending on the series it's in and the title and the guests and things, I will then record the number of views and the number of shares. That's what I'll do. And I will probably put another one in there and say, let's have a, I'm going to put in to the left here, comments. So if people leave comments, I can add those in there as well. So that at the end of the series, I can go back and go, oh, okay, that was good. That particular one did well. They have more comments, more shares. And that will help me decide how series 2 is going to go. Okay, all right. So measuring, I'm going to use my Google Sheet. So that's my plan. I now have a podcast plan. Okay. And the more I think about it, I'm definitely going to keep that name. I'm definitely going to do my intro and outro as I record, because I'm doing pre-recording, so I can do those together. I am definitely going to do both video and audio. So I've got lots of stuff I can use for content to market everything. Definitely going to have a panel of 4 women plus the expert guest sharing their stories and things. So my plan now is done. All I've got to do now then is think about, okay, when is it going to start? And getting the artwork done and the music done. And that all comes in when we look at presenting a production towards the end of the week. Okay. By Friday, if you're following along, or by the 5th day, if you're doing this later, you should have your plan in place and the beginnings of getting your guests together and everything else, and your artwork, and found the right music, found the right platform, so that when you're ready to go, you're ready to go. All right. So that's the plan. Let me stop share there. Now, does anybody have any questions on that? You can type them in there, or you can unmute yourself and ask me if you wish. I don't mind. Hello, Lisa. I think that all pretty much says what it needs to say. Again, the replay will go up in the space. Hello, Lisa. Did you want to ask a question?
No, I'm just going to say thank you very much for kind of a very informative session.
Thank you. That's good. And it's useful because if I do, because I am setting up, by doing it the way I would do it, it does give you an opportunity to think, oh, did I think of that? Did I, and it explains why planning. Yeah, I'm a great planner. So I'm going to put these up then. The replays will go up in the space, and I will put links to the planner, and I will also share the link so that you can copy the podcast planning, episode planning one as well. Because if you've got it all in front of you and you look at it, you go, no, I've got the guest, that's confirmed, that's confirmed, that's confirmed. Brilliant, job done. And you may use Trello. I use Trello a lot, or you just can use a simple spreadsheet, either way, but keeping a track of it. And sometimes you might need a plan B. So my plan B is a panel of women, because if for some reason our guest speaker or the person I booked in suddenly can't do something, and I pre-recorded it, I could reschedule the recording, or I could record a session with the panel and we could have a discussion, or I could do both. Gives me lots of options. So thank you for listening. So tomorrow, what are we doing tomorrow? Tomorrow we're looking at platforms. We're looking at how they work. We're looking at how you upload stuff to your platform, all that sort of thing, in recording. So I will probably have 2 or 3 platforms open that we can think about. If there's a platform that you think you're thinking of using and you want us to explore it during the session, let me know. Just drop a note, and we'll go and open one of those and see how that works. Okay, so I will see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock. In the meantime, don't forget, if you want to have a power planning session with me, you can. I'll put the link in, and we can spend some time just looking at you and your business, and sort of looking at the planning of your podcast or your whole, how do you use speaking to grow your business thing. So I'll put that in there. Yeah, and so looking forward to it. All right, people, have a great day, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.